This is the third in a series of videos demonstrating how to use the new Revit data exchange in direct design software. If we jump to where we left off in video 2, we had just completed identifying the walls that we want to come into our model, and so now we will click the import button to go ahead and bring those into direct design. And we get a little bit of a progress bar, and then we get a message that says import is successful, and we get some reminders here to make sure and do a few more tasks. And those are important things to remember. And what I'm going to do here as we work through these is keep a little running list of them in Notepad. We made this selectable here, and the reason is so a user can keep track of them separately and then sort of mark them off as you go. So let's look at these things. The first two are to verify the correct parapet height and the top story height. The reason we have these in there is because it's possible that some changes happen when you bring a Revit model, the real building, in as a direct design model. Direct design has rules like the stories the walls have to be the same height everywhere, and the parapet has to be the same height everywhere. And you may have had to massage that slightly coming in from a Revit model, for example, where let's say the parapet was stepped, it wasn't the same height in all places, and you decided you're comfortable with that because for the purposes of structural design, we can just take the tallest parapet height everywhere, something like that. Because of those kinds of simplifications, you do want to check parapet height and your story heights, etc., after you've brought them in, just to make sure that the model has those heights the way you want to use them for analysis. And the way that story heights are changed and parapet heights are changed is documented elsewhere. The point is to make sure that you do them. So let's say we've taken care of that in this case. We'll check them off our list. Set the correct mean and maximum roof heights. Now that's something that can be very important. When we pull walls out of a Revit model, we're just pulling walls. We're not looking at how the roof was modeled in Revit. That's something that's more complicated, and it's really simpler just to enter these numbers manually. So again, mean and maximum roof heights are something that you can enter in the program. If we look at where they are now, right here under structure details, you can see that they're set to the height of the walls, which is 25 foot 4 inches. And because this warehouse is essentially a flat roof building, that's how we want to leave it. So there's no further change that needs to be made there. We'll take that out. Adding control joints. Now this is a big one, and this in some ways is one of the real driving forces for us having this little checklist of things to do, because a control joint is really part of the model and something that one might assume comes in from Revit, but we don't pull that in. Control joints aren't really a first-class entity in Revit, and so we leave that for the user to do. And we'll actually jump through how to do that here. So let's pick an elevation. Let's pick one of the longer ones, and let's say that we want to put a joint in here. This is 130 feet long, so we're going to need several control joints along an elevation like this. Just for video demo purposes, I'm just going to put one that's kind of in the middle. So if I put one at 66 feet, that would be roughly in the middle. So let's pull up the wall along grid A here at the bottom story, which is the only story, and I'm going to put 66 feet, and it pops that line in there. Come on out, and now I've got a control joint there. And I would go on to add additional control joints on this elevation the same way, and I would add additional control joints around the building on the other elevations in the same way. That's an important thing to make sure you do. Column lines. This is another thing that will not come out of the Revit model. We're just bringing walls in. So let's say, let's look at a plan view here. Let's say that we had a column line right down the middle of this guy. That did not come in from Revit, so we're going to have to jump into the building section here. We're going to have to say we've got a column line, and It is right down the middle, so 35 feet. And that's not going to work because we are just a shade under that, so let's go with 34 feet 8 inches. There we go, 34 feet 8 inches. All right, so now we've got our column line right down the middle there, and our structural model in Direct Design is nicely synced up with the model in Revit. So let's cross that one off. The last one is to set remaining criteria, general, structural, and ASCE 7. And what that's referring to is the categories of criteria we have here: general, structural, ASCE 7. And this is fairly intuitive. It's unlikely anyone is going to expect that their wind speed, things like that, are going to come out of a Revit model. So you just need to make sure to come in here and edit these things as you normally would if you had just done this Direct Design model from scratch. And once you've done those things, your model should be complete, and you can click the Design button and start to get your structural design.